I've heard this and now I get it.
So we're gonna break some. I think it's scoop, but maybe not. There is coming imminently a Joe Jorgensen branded bourbon that is going to be the most important thing that happens in this awful 2020.
Maybe, yeah. They're not actually putting my name, they've got my signature on it, but they still have the actual name of the bourbon, so.
Yeah, but it's Joe Bourbon.
Limited series, I guess, yeah. Joe Bourbon.
So look what I have.
Bourbon.
Bourbon.
Jefferson's.
I slipped it past your handlers. And I thought we might, before Justin gets here, because I think Justin's a bit of a teetotaler, we won't judge.
We can hide it from him.
Yeah, we'll hide it.
Keep it back here.
Just like in high school.
Actually, I was a goody two-shoes in high school. I didn't drink in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sorry.
I won't tell you about my high school. And we learned the Danish toast today. So.
Skål.
Skål.
Good stuff. Although,
So.
No such thing as a bad bourbon, right?
No such thing as a bad bourbon. How did you get into bourbon? You're a now famous libertarian advocate for bourbon.
Well, I like the flavor. As I really was a goody two-shoes. In fact, I hope the story isn't too boring. I went back to my 10-year high school reunion. By that time, I was married, had a kid, was drinking. And we had a raffle ticket, and I kept watching the raffle things, and like there was a bottle of red wine, and I thought, because I like red wine with dinner, and I thought, oh, I hope I get the ticket for red wine. And sure enough, they call my ticket for the red wine, but they skip over and give me the jade plant. And I go up to the front, and I'm like, okay, here's my ticket, and they said, oh yeah, you were supposed to get the red wine, but we know you don't drink, so we gave you the jade plant. And I'm like, that was when I was in high school. You know, it's like I'm an adult now. So, yeah, somehow, and that's part of the reason why I think I'm a great, you know, I'm a credible person to talk about the drug war, because bourbon is my drug of choice. Somehow I made it through the 70s and 80s in high school and college not having tried marijuana, and bourbon's my drug of choice.
And mostly legal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I moved to my state in South Carolina and discovered you couldn't drink on Sundays when I first moved. So
my real agenda for pouring us a bourbon is that we have to talk about the debate last night. And I don't know about you, but a stiff drink sort of takes the edge off. I've never seen anything like that. It was like two grown men in a sandbox fighting over the other boys' toys, and it seemed like a perfect metaphor for what's happened in the two-party duopoly. Like, so much of what they do, maybe even everything they do today, they don't talk about the debt, they don't talk about healthcare, they don't talk about innovative technologies that could make our environment cleaner. They talk about how awful that other kid in the playground is, and you saw it last night. What are they doing?
Yeah, I know, and I didn't catch the whole debate. The TV's not working on our bus, which, by the way, Jess, have you asked Colby about that?
They were protecting you because you didn't want to see this. You can't unsee it.
But thank goodness, the videographer, I was able to see it on a tiny little screen, at least parts of it. And what was funny was I think they opened up, they talked about the Supreme Court justice, and I was sick. Well, I still am sick, actually. Best medicine there is, right?
That's what bourbon's for.
So I was really sick, like on the day of that. So I kind of missed out on the Democratic reaction. So they asked Trump, tell us about your Supreme Court nominee. And I immediately thought, you know what? I don't even have to hear Biden talk. I know the minute he opens his mouth, he's going to say she was a horrible choice. And I thought, our country didn't used to be like that. And I talked with a lawyer friend of mine later that evening, and he said, yeah, that in the olden days, something like 96% of the senators would approve, maybe 4 or 2, 3, whatever, not approve. And now it's 50-50. Now it's another political battle.
Yeah, there's an entire partisan industrial complex, and it could be about any issue, but but these past couple of weeks it's been about the court, where the signs were already printed and the protesters were already recruited, and they were going to be angry no matter what, and they won't give her or any choice a fair hearing. But both sides do the same thing, and it strikes me that so much of what's going on, it seems worse today than ever I've seen it before. And I live in the...
Yeah, you're here.
I'm in the belly of the beast, the Death Star, the swamp, whatever you want to call it. And it seems like their entire strategy is to divide the rest of us so that they can accrue power while the rest of us fight with each other.
Right. Yeah, they try to distract us with phony differences so that we think we're getting a choice. Because as long as people think they're getting a choice, as long as they think one guy or the other, then we won't look around for other choices. If it was basically the same party, well, then we'd start to say, well, wait a minute, maybe there's something better. So they blow up every little difference. And like I said, wouldn't, and I was sitting there thinking, wouldn't it be nice for Joe Biden just to say, you know what? And by the way, I'm sorry, I've not looked into the Supreme Court nominee, but so I'm not saying she's a good pick. But what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be nice if, they talk about Trump's pick and whoever it is, the Democrat says, yeah, that was a good pick, somebody who's impartial. And
it would never happen today.
No.
And that partisanship, and our future guest, Justin Amash, talks a lot about partisanship as sort of this toxic disease that's happening in our politics, where we don't talk about issues, we don't talk about solutions, we can't actually have a reasonable conversation about our differences because we are conditioned by the two parties to just fight with each other, and they seem to benefit from that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just said they don't really talk about solutions, right? They're almost not even talking about problems anymore. When I first became a libertarian, I explained, people are like, oh, what's a libertarian? This is back in the 80s, right? What's a libertarian? And I would say we take the best from the Republicans and the best from the Democrats, the economic freedoms from the Republicans and the individual freedoms from the Democrats. You can't even say that anymore. And, when I ran in '96, I used, in fact, my stump speech was why Republican politicians keep selling out freedom. And I used to talk about the many fine Republican voters, but the Republican politicians who weren't who were paying the lip service, who were, in fact, what my stump speech was is I compared it to 1-900 phone sex. I said that Republican politicians were the political equivalent of 1-900 phone sex. They tell them how good it's going to be, but they're never going to come over. They're going to promise you small government. They're going to promise you spending, but they're never going to come over and actually give it to you. Well, now they're not even promising it. When's the last time we heard of any Republican talking about cutting spending? At least back then they were lying about it. At least they were giving false hope. I mean, now they're not even talking about the problem of spending. It's just, orange mad bad and, Biden whatever. So, and they're not talking issues or problems or solutions.
I think that's actually Joe Biden's campaign slogan, whatever. There's this clip. It's burned into my mind, and someone asked Joe Biden about his son, and regardless of the importance of that issue, he got really angry, as he might have justifiably done, and he said, "That's not the issue. The issue is the other guy."
Right.
And so their entire campaign is vote for me because I'm not that guy. And by the way, anybody that supports that guy is an awful person. And both parties do this now. And I noticed this going back to the Libertarian convention and your speech. It was like you went through all of the problems and you offered the libertarian solution. And I said, it's been so long since I've heard a Republican or Democrat actually talk about things that could be better.
Right.
They don't do it.
No.
Just anger and divisiveness, and it plays out again and again. Terry and I live right by the Supreme Court, and on the evening that they announced that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died, we walked down to the steps of the Supreme Court, and it was before they'd put up barriers and done sort of the crowd management stuff. And I was there to pay my respects to a woman who I disagreed with on all sorts of things, but as a person, she was kind of a badass. And you have to respect that everything that she accomplished and how she got to the Supreme Court, and certainly a lot of her fans were on the stairs that night, but they couldn't help but let their anger slip through. And it quickly went from respecting a woman's life to, I'm really angry that we, meaning the good guys, don't get to choose who the next Supreme Court justice is. Politics is screwing up everything.
Right.
And I feel like maybe libertarians have a solution. Maybe
right here, sitting right here.
Maybe we have
yeah.
a solution, but nobody wants to even let people know that there's a third choice. Why? Why won't they tell us about you?
Well, of course, the Democrats and Republicans are the ones in power, and the way power works, and by the way, I study psychology, and I actually teach about power in my social psychology class. But yeah, when you have power, you just want more of it. It's the one thing that it's like you can't get enough.
Yeah.
And when you have it, you want more, you don't want to give it up. So they're not about to give it up. And if you look at the media, depending on which poll you go by, 92, 96, whatever percent, they're liberals. So they certainly don't want to help, who they consider the enemy. And again, we're not even talking issues anymore.
Yeah. I told you this earlier, but I read this article in the Washington Post about Rappahannock, which is about an hour west of here. Beautiful place. And it was farm country that has slowly been sort of repopulated with people from inside the Death Star, and they bring their politics with them. And it was about the clash between Trump farmers and progressive transplants. But the only thing that struck me about that story was that they actually interviewed a woman who had a very thoughtful view of the whole culture clash there. And she said, I'm voting for Joe Jorgensen. And the Washington Post, which must be an editorial decision, decided to identify you as one of the third-party candidates. It's like you have to actually go out of your way to spell your name right and not spell the word libertarian.
Right, yeah, because my name gets spelled wrong all the time. All the time. I think it's been spelled wrong on, diplomas. So the fact that they spelled my name right, says something.
But the media, I think, also feeds on the hate and the clickbait and us versus them.
Well, yeah, of course, if it bleeds, it leads. But yeah, when you mention about how, they don't want to get my name out there, and how, they're, just another third-party candidate. I am so tired of us being labeled third party. I can understand it in the 70s. However, a lot of people don't realize that we're the only I almost said it myself. We're the only party, other than the Democrats and Republicans, modern history, to be on the ballot in all 50 states consecutive presidential election years. And ballot access laws were worse before, but after we did that again, people were like, oh my gosh, they're catching up. And so now the hoops are a little harder to get through. So, and by the way, I have had people ask me, why don't you be in the third party debate? And it's like, no, I belong on that stage. Like at Thanksgiving, I belong on the adult table. I'm not going to sit at the little card table with, the other parties where they've got 20 or 30 ballot access. We are a major party. And, actually, I think what we've done and what we've accomplished with ballot access, we should be on the ballot in all 50 states, every election, every year now anyway, because we've jumped that hoop. We've proved it. Yeah. But now they're going to continue to make us prove it time after time after time after we've achieved basically major party status.
The two-party duopoly continues to change the rules for access to the debates, for access to the ballot. And I feel like we should take a moment here to respect all of these people in the audience
That we can't see.
who are the people that actually got the Libertarian
Thank
Party
you.
in all 50 states.
Oh, and I would like to give a shout out too to Joe Bishop Henchman because, our candidate, by the way, our campaign really running, we have a very frugal campaign, let me call it that. And everybody does 3 jobs and we just try to catch everything that slips through the cracks. But, and we have donated money, we have filed lawsuits. But I really think we would have had a few states slip through the cracks without Joe Bishop Henchman. So I am so glad he's our new chair, and I do give him credit. I could be sitting here on all 48 states if it weren't for Joe. So wherever you are out in the dark, thank you, Joe, for because I would get every now and then I'd get an emergency text, like. What's your middle name, or what city were you born in? We got a 10-minute, we're on the courthouse steps. We got this due in 10 minutes, so it's tough. Now, of course, the Democrats and Republicans, we hear of cases of them in which they completely miss the filing. They miss it by a day or a week, and the clerk of court or whoever says, oh, well, they meant to file it on time, so sure, come on, we'll put your name on the ballot. But if we're not there, split second before the stroke of midnight, then forget it.
I figure that the fact that they keep changing the rules and they keep taking more extraordinary steps to keep libertarians off the ballot tells me that we're on to something and it's time to double down.
Yep.
Don't you think?
Yep. And the fact that my website crashed, did you guys know that? We had, 11 inquiries a second, and my name was trending. So somebody knows how to spell my name, so that's good.
So that was during the debate last night, and
What time did it crash?
Right after the end of the debate.
okay, yeah.
When people are like, oh, help me, save me from this.
So like rats fleeing a sinking ship, people were Googling, who is this woman they won't let us know about? And how do you spell her name?
Yeah, it was probably like, seems like there was this guy, Gary Johnson. Isn't there some other party out there? Who's running this year on it, So, yeah.
The lockdown is just crazy, but...
Oh, and do you mind, sorry to interrupt, but that's the other problem. And, where I am in the polls. So Gary Johnson's name was included in the polls pretty early on. And being in the polls increases name recognition because what they do is they print the results and you see it in the newspapers, online, on TV, and so forth. And then, then people go, oh, wow, there's somebody else who's running. And then, then the ball gets rolling, right?
Yeah.
And so, but this time they wouldn't even put my name on the polls. And so, I think, and by the way, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Sorry, now you're going to take away my Libertarian membership card, my lifetime membership card. But, I mean, I look at it as, in order for a conspiracy to work, too many people have to keep their mouths shut. I'm a psychologist. People, not a license, though, I have to add that before they throw me in jail. But people can't talk. People love to gossip. And I can go into social brain theory and all of that. So people love to talk. And so people can't keep secrets. But I really think that maybe because Gary Johnson got to 13.6% last time, they thought, that's dangerously close. It'd be too obvious to say, okay, now it's got to be 18 or 20%. So I know, let's just not put her on the polls, problem solved.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that's a conspiracy. It depends on your definition, but I'm going to go all conspiratorial on you now.
Oh, no.
Because I'm a libertarian, but...
Well, maybe if I have some more of this, I could join you.
Yeah, you can drink, but and I'll dork out. I always have to quote a dead economist. I apologize, but...
No, I'm a dork libertarian.
Okay,
Yes.
but Adam Smith talked about the natural tendency of people to conspire for their interests, and I do think that there's an ecosystem inside the Beltway that very much feeds off of the hate, and they feed off of the tribal warfare. I mean, certainly the media is part of that, and they absolutely have relationships with the two parties that keeps everybody fat and happy. And so I think there is very much an effort to protect the status quo, because that's how everybody gets fed. So if that's a conspiracy, I'm a conspiracist, but I think it's
I'm
just
all
how
on board with
people,
that.
it's just how
Well-
it's just how people do things.
Well, to me, that's not a conspiracy. That's just business as
Yeah.
usual in Washington, and how they, all drink at the same bars at the end of the night after passing laws. Because again, they're not doing it for the principle or the reason. They're just out there doing it.
We'll call it the duopoly industrial complex.
There you go.
And it's the same as the people that fight the drug war. It's the same as the people that feed off the military industrial complex. It's the same people that claim that they're lifting people out of poverty while they're holding them into poverty. And that's just sort of the iron laws of politics in Washington, D.C. It's, I don't know if I can say this, but sometimes I feel like they're not trying to help.
Gee, you think?
I think it's possible.
Actually, I really think that sometimes they do intend to make change, and then they get into the system.
Yeah.
And
You get swallowed by the
possible,
system,
yeah.
and you face those incentives, and you do the things that you need to do to protect your job.
right.
But we're here to liberate them, and we were going down this track, and I took us down that sidebar, but you have said again and again and again that you're running to build the party so that as we grow as a party, that they can't deny us. And I think the more they push back, I feel like we're in the cusp of breaking the door down and actually connecting with the American people and getting the opportunity to make that sales pitch. Tell me about party building and what you think we need to be doing.
Well, part of it is just getting the word out because nobody else is. And I'm a little embarrassed to find out that I'm probably not doing as good of a job as myself, or doing as good of a job myself as I should be. So I'm also the world's biggest procrastinator. I've got a consulting company on top of my teaching, and I had to actually go down to the bank this past Friday to figure out a few checks so that I could, get it to the accountant in time to get the corporate tax done on time. And I asked, I was talking with the banker, and I said, oh, by the way, I guess, I'm busy, I'm running for president. She's like, I didn't know that. And I got out the picture on my phone, showed her me in front of the bus. She's like, oh, no way. And she runs out and, shows a picture, of course, to the other people in the bank. And I thought, that's really embarrassing that. Now, granted, I haven't set foot in my bank and probably since I was doing corporate taxes last year, but because they kind of know me around corporate tax time. Here's the disorganized lady, but so I haven't had really time to tell her. But even in our somewhat small town, I am running for president. Somehow you'd think she would have gotten the news.
Yeah.
Somehow she would have heard about it. And by the way, I live pretty much downtown, only 3 blocks from the bank. I mean, somehow you would think that the word would get out that you have a presidential candidate, 3 blocks from where you work. And that's basically what is being done to us now.
So I saw Jess, I think it was Jess, and you have to understand how blinding these lights are, but if Jess came up to the side of the stage, that probably means that, am I right? Okay.
Oh,
We have Congressman Justin Amash. Give it up for Justin.
Hey guys. We
hey,
shake hands,
do
but
you shake hands? Or you don't? Okay, good to meet you.
There we go.
do that.
Okay.
Congressman, did you single-handedly
I
stop?
can't see anything, by the way. Can you see?
No, we can't see anything.
Okay.
I can
Looks
barely
like there's
see
like
you.
a black abyss, just
Yeah.
like.
We're told that there's people out there, but we're not certain.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we were counting on you to single-handedly stop the next multi-trillion-dollar train wreck. Did you succeed?
Well, I might have delayed it.
Give them up for that.
I was criticizing the way Congress operates on Twitter, and a lot of my colleagues took note. I went to the House floor, and a lot of Democrats came up to me and said, "You're spot on that. That we don't we don't actually write the legislation, and nobody actually reads the legislation before voting on it. And a lot of them were like, you're spot on. So I think actually Democratic leaders were forced to delay it a little longer to at least look like they're giving members some time, even though they haven't really finalized the product, as far as I can tell.
So in other words, you have to pass the bill to know what's in the bill, even for the people who are passing the bill. That's what you're saying.
That's right. Even Congress doesn't know what's in the bill.
Yeah. Well, presumably Nancy Pelosi, and is she negotiating directly with the Trump White House? Is that the deal?
Yeah, there's like a triumvirate.
Yeah.
There's Mnuchin, an investment banker, and then the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader, and they basically negotiate these things. So, yeah, I'm sure that's like in Article 1, right? Like an investment banker.
Yeah. I feel like the founders envisioned this opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were talking about growing the Libertarian Party, and I want to ask you first, Congressman, about your decision to become a Libertarian, because you've been a small L Libertarian as long as I've known you, and probably long before that. But I made the same decision. Why did you make that decision?
Well, I tried being a Libertarian as a Republican, and the party's moving in the wrong direction. I don't think the Republican Party is very libertarian. I don't think they're becoming more libertarian. And that's not because we didn't try. We really did try. And we had some great libertarian Republicans. We've had Ron Paul, of course. And we're all happy that he's doing better after this last week. We're happy, and we hope and pray for his health. We've had Rand Paul. We've had Thomas Massey. We've had a number of more libertarian Republican representatives, and we haven't been able to get traction. I started the House Freedom Caucus in part to open up the process so that libertarian ideas would have a chance to be heard, and even that fell apart. Even that became essentially just a rubber stamp for the Trump administration. And so having tried all the things within the Republican Party, I tried when I got there to work with leadership. I soon discovered that doesn't work. I tried to oust leadership. That didn't work. I tried the House Freedom Caucus. That didn't work. So we've exhausted our efforts really along those lines. And I've been looking at the Libertarian Party for a few years, and I think it has the right ingredients to become a very successful, broadly supported party. And right now there is a market for it, because there are millions of people who don't feel represented by the Republicans or the Democrats. And I think they would love the opportunity to hear from another party. And that's why it's important what Joe is doing. I think it's important that we work hard to get her on the debate stage if we can. I mean, after seeing that debate last night, who could disagree with that? I don't know if you want to be on there with those two.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You said millions of people are looking for a new party. I was going to say after last night, I think it just doubled the number.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to be on the stage with those two.
I'm a teacher.
It's embarrassing.
I'm a teacher. I can handle problem students.
Yeah. But we need to spread our ideas, and I think you're doing a great job. I think we need to continue to spread the ideas of liberty and make the Libertarian Party a welcoming place for millions of people. I think often the mistake that libertarians make is thinking that we don't have a lot of support out there, and that we have to persuade all sorts of people to completely change their ideology to become libertarian. I don't think that's right. I think that there are millions of Americans out there who are already libertarians, and they are just waiting for people to organize something, for there to be some kind of infrastructure out there where they can go out and win campaigns. And so we have to help build that, and you're doing your part, and Gary Johnson did his part in 2016, and we'll always have people who quibble over like this strategy or that strategy, but the point is we have to work together and find common ground as libertarians, because there are millions of us out there, and we're not going to agree on every issue. That's okay. But I think we can find people who agree on 70-80% of our viewpoints.
So you're in.
I'm in, yeah. I'm in. Well, I'm in the party, so I'm in on. I'm in on making this work.
Yeah.
And you know, I thought about what if I just stayed an independent, and the issue with that is people want to be a part of something. Like there's still like a tribal nature to everything, and my dream is that someday we won't need political parties.
Yeah.
We won't need the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, and we won't even need the Libertarian Party. That would be a great day, where we can just run as individuals and put our ideas out there, and people can support us or reject us based on our ideas. But right now, given the way the two parties, the old parties, control the process, I do think we need to organize as a unit. We need to organize some other party to break in and weaken their grip, and then we can work to change some of these laws so that parties aren't as necessary.
Yeah. So Joe, Justin said something that I think has been a key part of your campaign, because you also believe that there's a lot more libertarians out there, that we have to reach them with a common sense message instead of all of the dead economists that I love to quote.
Yeah, well, in fact, statistics put it at about 40 million.
Yeah.
About 40 million Americans lean libertarian or would vote libertarian. That basically that's where their values are. And you know, somebody that I like to quote is Ed Clark, who, by the way, was the first presidential candidate. You didn't ask me how I became a libertarian, but
It's coming.
Okay. But Ed Clark, who was the first presidential candidate that I ever voted for, when he was asked, well, you certainly don't think you're going to win, do you? And he said, you know, if I sat at the kitchen table of every American family, just sat around the kitchen table and explained to them what libertarianism is, I would win in a landslide. And that's really what it's about. And I think that's why they're working so hard to keep us off the stage, because they know that.
You were scolding me today for using libertarian code words.
Oh, sorry.
And I love it. I love the fact that you're constantly thinking about communicating in a way that connects with people outside of our little tribe, because I see it every day. We have these secret handshakes and code words that we use, but mom and pop around the table, they don't talk that way.
Yeah, and you know, I was having a conversation with somebody at the Florida State Convention. We were sitting around the table, and I said, you know, I really think that we shot ourselves in the foot in the first, 10, 20 years, because basically you pretty much had to, cut your wrist, blood oath, and I believe everything in order to join the party. Because there are so many people I've talked to who have said, well, I would be a libertarian, but I just don't agree on open borders. Or I would be a libertarian, but I just don't agree on abortion. But they agree with everything else, but it's not like I don't want to join the party. It's kind of like I'm not allowed to join the party. And I was saying, you know what, we need to welcome more 70 people into the party. And there was somebody at the table who said, you know what, I joined when I was 70, and talking to people and reading more, I slowly learned that, yeah, freedom is better in pretty much everything. And he said, I ended up doing 2 terms on the LNC. So that just shows we don't have to wait until people are 100 to welcome them into the party.
Yeah, it has to be inclusive. And I know both of you guys that believe that. I'm going to do an informal poll of the audience. Are you guys cool with a 40 million member Libertarian Party that agrees with us 90% of the time?
Well, I hear people out there. I can't see them. But.
Yeah, we can't see any of you guys. It could be actually like recorded audience participation. So what do you guys think? And I'll start with you, Joe, but I want to ask you, Justin, as well. What do you think the pitch is? Like, for people that don't know that they're libertarian, but they really are because they have those common sense values?
Well, I just like to ask them what's important to them. And I like to talk about the issues that are important to voters. And people have asked me, what's your elevator pitch? I really don't have one, because anytime you sell something, the pitch is different to different people. but I try to focus on what is important to them. And right now, what tops the list would be healthcare, jobs, the economy, that kind of stuff. So no, I'm not going to go out there and pitch something that we might be excited about that nobody else cares about.
Yeah, I think Joe's right that you have to meet the voters where they are. I think a lot of times libertarians are trying to educate voters about every issue, and to a lot of people, they'll find it obscure. There's nothing wrong with talking about ending the Fed. I talk about it, others have talked about it, and I think that's important. But if that's the main message, you lose a lot of people. You want to get them to the point where they care about that issue, but in order to get them to that point, you have to meet them at other issues they already know about. For those of us who are in libertarian circles, we talk about that kind of stuff all the time. We might talk about Hayek all the time. I like to talk about Hayek and read Hayek, but people at home mostly don't know about Hayek.
By the way, the third hour of this conversation is all Hayek.
All right, good.
All the time.
So that's okay. Like, I know that I care about Hayek. I really like Hayek. He influenced a lot of my thinking. Those people who I'm talking to will get there eventually, but I don't need them there on day one. What I need for them to consider is the Libertarian Party and libertarianism, so that we can eventually get to the point where they care about Hayek. So you do need to talk about those kinds of things, everyday things. And also, most people can see that there are problems in government. That's not hard to see. They recognize that the government doesn't work well. And for those who get worried about libertarians wanting to completely eliminate government, I like to explain to people who are otherwise open to our views but worried about, like, well, aren't you going to get rid of the whole government? We won't have any government. I like to say, look, we're not about completely eliminating government, first of all. There are some people who are for completely eliminating government, but not the party as a general matter or libertarians as a general matter. But it's about having the right-sized government and the right type of government in the right place. So, for example, the federal government shouldn't be involved in your daily life at all, really. It doesn't have any role there. It's too far away from you and too big. But your family is a form of government. It might have a lot of involvement with your life, and it obviously does. And a local government or a neighborhood association might have more involvement. That's okay, not because they're great forms of government. Like a neighborhood association, we all know, is not necessarily a great form of government. But
they're the worst.
But you can escape it more easily. Right? So if it's not a good form of government, you don't like it, first of all, it's only a few people usually, so you can, maybe go rattle them a little bit. But you also can just leave. It's a lot easier than leaving the United States, right? So the further away a government is from you, the less you want it involved in your daily life, because it's harder to escape. And so it should have a minimal role in daily sorts of things. And I think when people think about limited government in that way, they're much more open to it. They say, yeah, I do agree with that. And they can see the problems with the federal government getting involved in everything from our schools to, every little detail of our lives. So, yeah, I think it's just about explaining it the right way.
So I had Penn Jillette on my show last year, I guess. That time has melted under the lockdowns. I don't actually know what year it is, but I had Penn Jillette on my show, and I asked him this question: how do we persuade people who are libertarian that they are libertarian? And he scolded me for that. He's like, I think that's the wrong question. I think that's arrogant that you're actually going to school people into the right way of thinking about things. And he proposed, and I'll butcher his vision, but he was saying, what we need to do is what people do, and we find common ground where there is common ground, and we start working together on the things that we actually agree on, and through that process of cooperating and working through our issues, we're actually living the libertarian ideal, which is not, it's not a set of books from economists, it's just the way that people work things out. So I try not to convince people anymore. I try to listen, as you say. Like, let's hear where they're coming from, and see if there isn't some common ground there somehow. Yeah,
my first job out of college was being a marketing rep for IBM. So So that's the way I think.
So what is that like knocking on doors, marketing rep, or what is that?
No, it was the huge computers back then. In fact, I hate to date myself. The personal computer had not been invented yet. So these were big computers.
So you couldn't take that door to door,
No.
is what you're saying?
No.
I've seen these pictures.
Yes.
So Joe, how did you become a libertarian?
Yes, thank you. I read Animal Farm in grade school, and it made a lot of sense. And what's
Not
fun?
fiction anymore.
Yeah,
Nonfiction
I
anymore.
know. And you know, when I was in high school, I think this what really got me thinking. When I was in high school, and I went to a very small town, 5,000 people, I literally would cut through a cornfield to walk to school. I mean, small town girl. And in the graduation, I was the freshman playing in the band, and the valedictorian, who was the daughter of some big muckety-muck, you know, school superintendent, something, she gave a valedictorian speech that just rocked the entire town. Like, even my parents were talking about it. Everybody was talking about it. And one of the things I remember she said was, isn't it hypocritical that people sit there holding their martinis and tell other people they can't smoke marijuana? And I thought, you know, she's right. That doesn't make any sense. And I'll keep in mind, I was a goody two-shoes in high school. I didn't do either, but that just seemed outrageously unfair to me. And read Ayn Rand in college, so you know I'm a libertarian. And then when I was in my MBA program in Dallas, I heard Honey Lanham on the radio talking about the Libertarian Party. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's somebody else who believes what I believe in. And so went to the very next meeting they had, and then voted for Ed Clark. But what was kind of funny was, this was in Dallas, of course, and you know the show Dallas. By the way, that show,
I don't
so
think
true.
they know about it, but
Yeah, I know. I'm
Does
talking.
anyone know the show Dallas? Go ahead, shame us, we're older up
Dude,
here.
yeah, I was going to say, maybe your great-grandmother told you about the show Dallas, but if you've ever seen the images, it's all true. I lived it. I was living in Dallas in the 80s. And I show up at the first meeting there, and it was this gorgeous mansion, you know, this backyard, well manicured with, you know, like furniture nicer than this. And my husband and I were like, I guess you have to have a lot of money to join the Libertarian Party, maybe. And it was really funny because I found out later that actually I probably went to the only party, you know, in the entire country that had money. And, you know, I realized, yeah, these are my people. So I never came from Democrat or Republican. The first presidential candidate I ever voted for was Ed Clark. I voted Libertarian every year since then. In fact, I moved to Louisville temporarily for my husband's job. We weren't there long, and we were only there for a few months before I registered. And by the way, I hate paperwork. Like, I actually earned another master's degree that I don't have a diploma for because I didn't fill out a 2-page document. That's how much I hate paperwork. So anyway, but I went through the paperwork so I could register to vote for Ron Paul in 1988, knowing I was going to have to re-register. And so I've done whatever I could. So I'm, you know, straight libertarian every
So you're
cycle.
kind of OG libertarian, like.
You got
Yeah,
it.
yeah, you got us beat. Both Justin and I are recovering Republicans. We have plenty of skeletons in our closet, and we just have to own that. Justin, I love the story of how you found libertarian ideas, because I think it points to a strategy that the party could engage in, like so few people know, but we have tools now. Tell that story.
well, I don't. Are you talking about the story about how I discovered?
You Googled.
Yeah. So okay. So we've talked about this before. Yeah, I figured at some point, this was maybe in my 20s, that even though I kind of agreed with Republicans on a number of things, I didn't agree with them on everything. And there were some clear differences. And I had some idea about how sort of rules evolve and the law evolves. And so I sort of just entered it into a Google search to figure out, you know, who out there maybe has written about this or thinks like this. And and I get the Wikipedia page for F.A. Hayek. And so I read the Wikipedia page on F.A. Hayek, and I'm like, yeah, this is like exactly what I'm talking about. This is what I mean. And I think it was a really special moment because also Wikipedia itself was inspired in part by F.A. Hayek and his ideas on spontaneous order. So I sort of discovered it that way, and I'd always been, like I said, I'd always been libertarian since I was a kid, at least philosophically, but didn't really know much about libertarianism as like a distinct set of ideas, and only knew about Republicans and Democrats really growing up. That's what I heard about. You hear about Republicans and Democrats, so you think, well, you must be one of them, but always felt like there was something just a little bit off. There's more than something a little bit off, but with some of the Republican ideas that I'd heard, and I was like, I just don't agree with that. So for a while, I just thought I was a Republican who had some unusual ideas.
Yeah, and consistent with what both of you guys are talking about, I feel like our biggest challenge, not just in the Libertarian Party, but libertarianism generally, is that our audience is so much bigger than we appreciate. And we have to think about things in a different way than when you first became a libertarian. And it was a very small cadre of people that shared a set of values and had read the same books, and they could all quote Hayek. I have no doubt about that. But like the technology potentially liberates all of these 40 million people that you're talking about. So our tactics and our strategies we should throw away any old ideas that we had and just think, okay, how do we talk to millions and millions and millions of people? How do we do that? I'm putting you on the spot.
I don't know. How do we talk to millions? By having a website that gets crashed because millions are looking it up, I guess. Is that a good answer?
Well, running for president is one of those things. You talked about Ron Paul, and it looks like he's doing incredibly well, but he used presidential politics as a platform.
And Ron Paul was great at doing this, at spreading the message, and he used his run for the presidency as a tool for spreading the message. I'm not sure when he was running he was thinking about winning as much as he was about changing minds and creating a massive force of young people out there who really cared about these ideals and would then produce Justin Amash's and Thomas Massey's and others in Congress who would carry on the mantle. I do think we have to take new approaches now, because Ron Paul was, even in 2012, there's a big difference in terms of how you reach people in 2012 versus 2020. And certainly very different from 2008. So we have to reach people in new ways, and social media is one way to do it. And I try to do that through Twitter. Sometimes I think I spend too much time trying to educate about libertarianism and not enough time actually reaching voters where they need to be reached. And I think I can do a better job of that, and I've learned over time to become better at that. But there's always like this, little F.A. Hayek inside me that says, you got to teach people about spontaneous order or whatever. But it never works out as well as I'd hope. So I think we need to go out there and just talk about the things people care about. And then we have to use new formats, like podcasting is becoming a big thing. So we have to use that. I know you do it, Matt. We need to reach people in new ways, finding new ways to get into their homes. We don't have to be restrained by the current media system. The media structure is not conducive to getting our ideas out there. The what they call the mainstream media, I guess, or the establishment media. It's not that helpful to us. It doesn't mean that we can't get on those shows and talk to new people on there, but there are biases built into that system that work against us. So I think we do have to find alternative ways to reach people.
So one of the debates that I see it on Twitter every day, and Joe, sometimes libertarians are critical of their own. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but we're talking about listening and understanding where people are coming from. And Justin and I, perhaps more than you, have spent a lot of time talking to conservatives, trying to understand where they're coming from, and trying to get them to understand where we're coming from. But I also talk to progressives, and I think it's a mistake to sort of say, oh, we can only talk to these guys because they're more persuadable.
Oh, yeah, and let me tell you, when I went to the 1991 National Convention, I went to a talk given by, it was either Andre Maru or Don Ernstberger, I think it might have been Andre Maru, but one of them said that, okay, so when you go out and try to persuade people, start with Republican men, and then look at Republican women, then Democratic men. Don't even try Democratic women, because you're not going to win them over anyway. You're just wasting your time. So yeah, those were the marching orders we were given.
Yeah, and I just reject that. Like I think we should talk to everybody. Yep. I think we should talk to immigrants. I think we should talk to Black Lives Matter protesters. I think we should talk to Trump voters. Like,
did you hear I was criticized for doing that?
Yes,
did you know
I
that?
know.
Okay.
I'm aware.
Okay. Oh, so you were just doing that to be nice to me. Thanks.
No, I'm trying to start some trouble for you.
Oh,
like I assume there's people on Twitter right now super angry about us.
Yeah, no. But let me mention, for those of you who don't know, first of all, it was not the Marxist National Organization I was talking to. It was a wonderful black preacher who had been a felon, and he had never heard of the Libertarian Party. And first of all, I explained to him that, you know, what the Libertarian Party believes is that if you've done your time, that you're out in society, you have the right to defend yourself. I said, if you're so dangerous you can't be trusted with a gun, you should still be in prison. But you're out of prison, you know, why should you not be able to defend your life? And he was like, yeah, you know, that makes sense. Yeah. And then I told him the rest of the Rosa Parks story. You know, everybody knows the beginning, but they don't know that that was a government-run, government-owned bus. And he said, I didn't realize that. And so I explained how, you know, what we agree with Black Lives Matter is we agree with the problems. We agree with, you know, the no-knock raids, the qualified immunity, the racist drug war, all these things. But they're turning to bigger government. But guess what? Big government's what caused it. You know, smaller government is the answer. That's where you're going to have people who aren't going to treat you that way, or at least if they do, they're held accountable. You know, businesses go under. People get bad reputations. There's no accountability with the government. And he, by the way, he accompanied me to the state convention that evening and was really fascinated by the ideas. So, you know, it's like, why not go to somebody who agrees with you on the problem and just show how you need to go that way for the answer, not that way.
Yeah, I totally think that let's.
Thank you.
The abuse of police power and the murder of Breonna Taylor, the murder of George Floyd, and I'll use the M word on those. Maybe you guys don't, but these are teachable moments about what happens when you give government officials too much power. And to me, not speaking to Black Lives Matter protesters, not speaking to activists in Ferguson, I've done this for years, and I think there's an opportunity there. And getting back to the question of listening, why don't we listen a little bit? And I like Justin, you were on this issue before it was cool.
Yeah.
And yet, you don't get that much help from Democrats or Republicans.
You know, just to reiterate what's been said, I think it is important that we reach out to everyone on the right and the left. I don't think of libertarianism as necessarily on the right or the left. You know, when I first got into it, when I first started to think about libertarianism in a more concrete way, I at first probably did think of it as something more on the right, like something more closely connected to conservatism. Over time, especially seeing how conservatism under Trump and under some other Republicans has evolved, I would not say that it is closer to the right than to the left. And I think it's a mistake to try to pin it on one side of the aisle or the other. We can reach all Americans, and I think we need to reach all Americans. We need to reach out to people in the African American community, in the Latino community. We need to reach out to refugees even. We need to reach out to people of all walks of life. We need to reach out to men and women. and everyone under the sun. So if we do that, I think we can be very successful as a movement and as a party. And if we resort to this idea that the only people who are winnable are like disenfranchised Trump supporters who really like Trump, but maybe they're they're upset that the government didn't shrink enough or something, and so maybe we can win them over, win them back. I think that's a losing strategy. It's not just about sort of disgruntled people on the right. It's about everyone. And we shouldn't be afraid to talk to people from all walks of life. I know you'll get pressure as a presidential candidate, sometimes from libertarians who will tell you, well, don't try to reach out to those people or don't talk to those people. And I think that's a mistake. We should reach out to every single person because I think most Americans are open to our ideas and can be won over. And I can tell you from my own experience in my own district that I have been able to bring as many people from the left over to libertarianism as I have from the right. I think it's been, I don't know which one's more, it's probably about equal. And I have a number of constituents now who are big supporters of mine, and they started as Democrats or they started as progressives. So don't assume that it's only one side of the aisle you can pull from. You can pull from everywhere and bring them over. And a lot of times it's just that they didn't realize that we had so much in common.
Yeah, and do you mind, I don't know if you heard I've seen statistics that, everybody thinks we pull from the right. We pull equally from both sides, although most come from, of course, independents. Or
Yeah, and I've had situations like where I'll go, like I remember one time I came home, I was in the airport in Grand Rapids, and a nice woman working at the airport and her friend, they were both working there. She says to me, Congressman Amash, I'm a big supporter. I'm not quite sure about all the libertarian stuff, but can you explain it to me a little more? And so it's because she trusted me and because I'd engaged with the community in a respectful way. She'd heard about my town halls and seen me out there. She was willing to consider libertarianism. She was like, I like this guy. He says things that seem reasonable. I'm a progressive, that's what, from her perspective, she's a progressive, and I'm not a progressive, but she's a progressive, and she was open to the idea. She wanted to learn more about it. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and do you mind, sometimes I can't help but to put on my psychology teacher hat. But yes, we know that persuasion works better for people, that you like. And and I think that was our problem in the early days, going around talking about it's my body, it's my money, and self-ownership, and talking about me, instead of what is it I can do for you. And you have to be likable and talk about them and not self-ownership. And I know libertarians do it in good faith because they're trying to say you should have self-ownership too, but,
Yeah, they can come to those ideas, but they have to come to it in a different way. If the first thing you introduce to them is something that sounds to them like you don't care about other people, then they're not likely to listen.
Right.
So we know, because we understand the philosophy better, we know that it's not about not caring about people, because it's about voluntary interactions. It's about working together. It's actually about cooperation and living with other people. Whereas on the right and the left, often the Republicans and Democrats are pushing anger toward the other people, hatred toward the other people. It's about distancing yourself from the other people, whereas libertarians are about working together and living together. It is about cooperation and interaction. But sometimes when they hear, self-ownership or that kind of thing, and that's the first thing you introduce, they get put off. So you have to come about it the right way, and they will get to the point where they understand the philosophy better. But that's not the way to approach it, I think.
Yeah, don't lead with the non-aggression principle.
Right.
No one knows what you're talking
That's
about.
right.
So we're gonna switch to a town hall meeting at this point, and I'm giving a warning to the guys out there that are going to be walking mics around. But I have to say, talking about persuasion, both of you, Joe and Justin, were instrumental in convincing Terry and I to switch our party registration to Libertarians. We're actual big L Libertarians now. And we are lifetime members of the party, and both of you guys and everything you're talking about tonight is why we did it, because we think there's an opportunity to grow and prosper and build this thing together. So I want to thank you both. Give it up for these guys.
Thank you.
And we literally can't see anything, so if somebody gets a mic.
Right here for Q&A, come meet Charles if you have a question for our panelists.
Maybe put a phone flashlight on somebody's face. Do the Blair Witch Project.
It's just going to be one person asking all the questions. Just an impersonator?
Yeah.
Just keeps.
Oh, by the way, I'd prefer your questions were less than a half an hour long.
So no follow-ups, and please state your name, where you're from, and keep it to less than 30 seconds.
Hi, I'm Chris Cooper from Burke, Virginia, not that far away from here. And my question is, what would you guys do to fix the COVID crisis? That's it.
The what crisis?
COVID.
The COVID crisis?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, once the genie's out of the bottle, it's a little bit hard to go back in time, and I mean, it's impossible to go back in time. So it's hard to contain it once you get to the point where it's spread everywhere. I do believe that you should wear masks when you're out and about, and you should socially distance and do those kinds of things. I think those are probably the most important steps you can take, and I think that does actually have an effect on containing it. There are obviously governors around the country that have massively overreached, and I think we should object to that, and we shouldn't take it as like a new normal in life, that we're going to be told this is going to be closed and that's going to be closed, and the governor is going to micromanage everything. That is very dangerous for our lives going forward, to make that the new normal. And they keep pushing back the idea of, I guess, a victory over COVID, right? First it was 15 days, then it was 30 days, then it was like, okay, give us like 3 months, then it was like 6 months, and now it's like, oh, when we get the vaccine, and then it's like, well, even if we get the vaccine, it's going to be maybe 2 or 3 years. So, look, we're...
Become like the war on drugs now.
Right. So we have to live our lives. The point of masks and social distancing and other things is not we keep the economy all closed down and everything, we don't live our lives. We're going to have to live our lives. We try to minimize the impact of COVID, but this idea that you're going to completely eliminate the impact is wrong-headed. We don't do that with anything in life. If you wanted to completely eliminate car accidents, you'd also eliminate cars. You'd say no cars on the road. There's no situation in life where any of our laws are designed around completely eliminating the thing. It just doesn't happen. They're designed to deter or to help us get by with some balance in mind, safety versus our ability to live our lives. So yeah, we're going to have to keep living our lives, and when you get a situation like this in the future, I think it is important to try to contain it as soon as possible, to try to minimize the impact, and that means getting testing out as quickly as possible, and having private companies ready, working with the government as necessary to address that situation, be able to test it. And we were very slow in this country at getting the testing going right away.
Yeah, and can I add to that? This is where I point out, the reason I'm running for government or for president is because government is too big, too bossy, too nosy, too intrusive. But the worst part is it usually hurts the very people it tries to help. And I show the FDA as an example, that there were dozens of testing kits we could have used, but thanks to the FDA, the CDC, in the beginning at least, we were only able to have 2 of them. So Trump should have gotten rid of the FDC or the FDA obstacles. And you talked about masks, and I just want to mention, I use masks as, I think it's a great example to talk about, here's what makes a libertarian different from a Democrat or Republican. Democrats and Republicans, they want to vote. We all go to the ballot box, we all vote for one way, we get somebody for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, whatever, we all have that one, size fits all. With libertarianism, though, we get to vote with our feet, vote with our dollars, in which, this dispels, Walmart helped dispel the myth that if government doesn't do it, it doesn't get done. Because Walmart came out and said, we don't care what the law is, we are going to require masks, and other stores quickly followed suit. So I want individuals to live in a libertarian society in which every day they get to vote with their feet or vote with their dollars. Every day they can say, I'm going to Walmart because today I vote for a mask, or I'm going to go to one of the other stores because today I vote to not wear a mask. And that way we all get what we want instead of a one-size-fits-all from the government.
Yeah, and Joe made two fantastic points there. One about the regulatory obstacles that we need to clear out so that the private sector can work quickly to handle these problems. And then it's a great point about how before governments took any action, already organizations and businesses were taking action. I mean, people often pretend like it's the government that got everyone to do all these things, but actually, you had the NBA, for example, canceling things before anyone told, the government didn't tell them to cancel things. You had stores start to change their policies based on their own decision making. And that's much better than a one-size-fits-all policy, because a person who runs a business, they want to keep their customers safe. They don't want an unsafe environment for their customers because they want people to come in and shop there. So they're trying to create a place that is safe for people. And what was happening was the government, like in Michigan, for example, was coming in and saying, well, every store is going to work in this way, but not every store is the same. They have different layouts. They operate in different ways. It's weird to put a one-size-fits-all policy on businesses that are very different from each other. And in some cases, you had policies where the government was endangering people by putting certain restrictions in place that was causing, for example, long lines out the door. So they were saying, well, you have to have your aisles this way, and then the line was building out the door where people are just like, standing next to each other, putting themselves in more danger rather than if you had the store more open and people could just walk around and stay away from each other. In Michigan, we also had a situation where the governor said, you can't sell certain products in this store, but other stores could sell that product. So they actually just closed off aisleways. They said, these products are not available for sale in this store, which was helping to spread the virus because you were now forcing people to make another trip to another store. And so it's easy to pretend like the government makes common sense decisions, but it doesn't always make common sense decisions. It often makes rash decisions. It makes decisions that they think will benefit them often, like the governor wants to feel like she or he did everything possible to keep everyone safe and doesn't want any responsibility if something goes wrong, right? They want to be able to say, well, I basically locked everyone into their home, so if there's COVID anywhere, it's because someone else did it. Yeah. They don't want the responsibility of, well, we'll give people a little more leeway, and it's possible that something does go wrong, and I might take some blame for it. So there's a danger in that in the way government operates.
No, so I'm going to take this opportunity to do something that my wife, Terry, tells me not to do, and I'm going to quote dead Austrian economists. Yeah. Because, sorry, Terry, but Hayek agrees with you guys because his whole critique of central planning and the inability of the smartest people at the top of the pyramid to know exactly what to do is they can't possibly know enough to centrally plan, like which aisles in that shopping store in Michigan I can purchase from. And the whole point of that market process, that beautiful thing that Hayek described where people are living in this radically uncertain world. We don't know what's happening tomorrow. And the whole process of working things out is because it mitigates radical uncertainty. And if you don't know what the virus is, and you don't know what the implications are, the last thing you do is say, okay, we're going to cede all of these decisions and all of these choices to some bureaucrats at the CDC and the World Health Organization and the White House. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, or sorry, Joe, or epidemiologists, because I got this on Twitter, like where I mentioned that epidemiologists don't know everything.
Yeah.
And I got this backlash like, oh no, they know everything. They know exactly what's going on. They know exactly who's shopping where. And no, epidemiologists are studying things in a general fashion, and they can be useful. Nobody's saying we don't need epidemiologists. The point is that they don't have all knowledge. You need a combination of scientists and people like epidemiologists and people who are just on the ground and know the information on the ground. That kind of knowledge is really valuable. The business owner who understands when his store is busy and how people go down the aisles and what kind of things they buy, that is really important information that the government does not know. And I don't care how many times people on Twitter will tell you, yes, all the scientists know all that stuff. No, they don't. They don't know all those details about how people shop and how people do things. But the business owner knows it, and he doesn't know about the store down the street, but he knows about his own store, or she knows about her own store. So we need to work together and not put everything in just these scientists. That's not all of the knowledge on earth. There's knowledge that people have on the ground who are not scientists, who are not experts, but they really know their own lives and they know their own business.
Okay, we're going to try to be a little more brief with the next answer, but let's keep rolling.
Hi, good evening. My name is William Luke. I grew up in the Shenandoah Valley a couple of hours from here and now live in Northern Virginia. This question is for Congressman Amash. What are your thoughts on re-election? Do you believe you have enough of a personal base in your home district to become the first Libertarian elected to Congress?
So I'm not running for re-election. And maybe you're the last one to get the news, but no, I'm not running for re-election this time. I want to continue to work with the party to build it up, to build up the infrastructure, but I don't feel like running for election this time was going to produce the kind of 2-year term that I really want. I've been there for almost 10 years now in Congress. And as I talked about earlier, I've tried so many different routes, and now I'm a Libertarian, but I'm a party of one in Congress. And you have an infrastructure in Congress that doesn't really work for the American people. And I don't think it's going to change just because one person gets elected as a Libertarian. I think that's important, but I don't think that's going to change it. I do think we need to have people out there educating people about what's wrong with our government and reaching new people and bringing them in as Libertarians. The government is only going to change when people at home start to recognize what the problem is and understand that, yes, they are Libertarians too, and they want to address it. Until we get to that point, I think we're just going to be spinning our wheels in Congress. And as you see, we don't even work on legislation anymore in any real way. As much as you might want a Libertarian like me, or even my friends like Thomas Massey or Rand Paul or others to get things through Congress, we're basically at the mercy of these leaders, so-called leaders, who don't really operate it in any open fashion. So I'm not trying to discourage people from running for Congress, but I can tell you I've tried it, and it does not produce the kind of outcomes that we will be happy about. And that doesn't mean we're going to get all of our libertarian ways, but I mean we don't even get to the table, and that's true of libertarians, progressives, conservatives, everyone outside of essentially the leadership establishment.
I'll just have to get elected president.
I think getting elected president.
We're going to have to take the White House.
Yes.
Getting elected president makes a big
Go
difference.
straight for the White House.
I want to say something here too, because I often hear from libertarians that the way to advance libertarianism or advance even the Libertarian Party is to only go for the small races. And I think that's actually backward. I think actually you need to reach big. I think you need to have candidates, strong candidates running for president. I think you have to have strong candidates running at all levels of government. It doesn't have to be me, it doesn't have to be Joe, but we're two people who have run for office or are running for office. But we do need to have those candidates out there. I think something like the White House is actually a more attainable thing in the near future than, say, a Congress full of libertarians. I think the higher up you go, the easier it is to overcome the duopoly. The easier it is. It's still very, very difficult. They put so many obstacles in Joe's way, and in any presidential candidate's way who's running as a non-old party candidate. But actually, there's a better opportunity there and a better chance to reach people. So we do need to continue to fight on the presidential level. I don't think it's about getting everyone in your city commission to be libertarian. That's important too, but I don't think that's the. That's important too. That's important too, but I don't think that's the most important thing. I think actually Joe's race is the most important race here.
Good evening, panel. My name's Kanan. I'm from Santa Barbara, California. My question involves China and the Uyghur situation currently. How do you feel the U.S. should address the Uyghur and the slave labor that is being conducted in China and the profiting of U.S. companies knowing or unknowing of the slave labor?
Yeah, that's an issue that's been before Congress, and I'm obviously opposed to any slave labor, and I don't think that businesses should be doing trade with companies or entities that engage in slave labor, and I'm okay having laws to that effect. I don't think there's anything wrong with that from a libertarian perspective, to restrict trade with companies that are involved or entities or organizations within China that are engaged in slave labor, because a fundamental principle is that we believe in human liberty. That doesn't mean that, as we've talked about many times as libertarians, that we need to go fight every war. We can't possibly do that. We don't have the resources to do that. And we'll get into all sorts of entanglements by doing that. But at the same time, we can work to prevent trade with people who are engaged in slave labor, because that is a fundamental violation of human dignity, human rights, and so for my part, I don't have a problem with that, with restricting that.
Go ahead.
So I think the one thing we can do as libertarians who don't believe in invading every country that doesn't live up to our moral standards is that we can call them out, and we can support protesters in Hong Kong, and we can call out the racially based camps in China, and we can insist on a free market basis that if companies are engaged with those kinds of practices, that we won't support them. I think that's the power, like the same power that's going to propel the values that we all hold dear through social media, through communicating, through technology. Let's hold them accountable. And that's something that libertarians can do without pulling their punches, without saying, oh, well, I have that deal going on with President Xi. By the way, congratulations for decades of communist oppression, as a certain president of the United States once said about him. We don't do that. That's BS. We call it out, and we demand human rights for every individual, but we do it through peaceful means, I think.
Yeah, I think that the free market can do anything better than the government. I think individuals can do anything better than the free market. And there are so many examples. For instance, we hear so many people saying, well, we need government to take down Facebook because Facebook is too big. Heck, I worked for IBM in the early 80s, and that's when the Justice Department dropped the lawsuit, because for 13 years they tried to break up IBM, and they were saying there was enough paperwork to go to the moon and back. And the Justice Department, the federal government couldn't do it, but who could? Two guys out of their garage. I would put my faith in the free market. We've seen now companies are out there, they're advertising saying we're helping the environment. Look, we're giving our mothers daycares. Look, we're doing, and when Kathy Lee Gifford was exposed, people really said, hey, this isn't okay, and she had to do a big PR thing, and I think if people call them out, that the free market can be much more effective than the government.
Hi, my name is Christopher Roberts. I'm from McLean, Virginia, and my question is, how would you respond to voters who say a vote for Joe is wasted or that it's just a throwaway to Trump or Biden? Thank you.
Well, I can start with that. The wasted vote is the vote for someone you don't believe in. I think that's the wasted vote. So if you're voting for Trump or Biden and you don't really believe in Trump or Biden, then you are absolutely wasting your vote, and you are perpetuating the problem. And this is what I think is important to get across, because I often get this stuff about don't both sides this, and you know, you've got to support Biden, they'll say, because otherwise Trump will win. And the reality is, those people who say things like that are the ones who created Trump. They actually gave us Donald Trump. It's this two-party system, this belief that you must vote for one or the other, that allowed someone like Donald Trump to become president. Because you may remember that a lot of Republicans didn't like Donald Trump. He wasn't very popular in the Republican primary. He was just more popular than Jeb Bush, and which is not, you know, that was not a high threshold to overcome.
Yeah, please clap.
Please clap. He was, and I'm sure Jeb is a very nice man, so I'm not trying to make fun of him, but it wasn't a high threshold to clear. And so there were millions of Republicans out there who didn't like Donald Trump, but what did they say? They said it's either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, so we have to vote for Donald Trump. It's actually this mentality that gave us Donald Trump. And now you have it being perpetuated by people on the left who are saying, primarily people on the left, sometimes I hear from people on the right too, who will say silly things like, if you vote for Joe, that's the end of the world and you'll give us Donald Trump again. No, it's those people who think only in terms of right versus left, Democrat versus Republican. They're the ones who gave us Donald Trump, and they will give us another Donald Trump in the future, and they will give us more Joe Bidens who have violated liberty throughout his 40-something years in government. Kamala Harris, who gave us all sorts of bad laws and continues to violate people's rights as a senator. They are the creatures of this system, and we don't want more of that. We don't want more Donald Trumps. We don't want more Joe Bidens. And the way to break that is to vote for someone like Joe Jorgensen.
Yeah, the better Joe.
The better Joe.
My answer is very similar. I say a wasted vote is voting for something that you don't want. And what I ask Republicans is, do you like Trump's increased deficits, increased debts, not bringing the troops home? And if you want more of that, if you want bigger deficits, if you want bigger debts, then vote for Trump. If you are a Democrat and you're just pro-war and you think that anti-war is just way off the mark, go ahead and vote for Joe Biden when the Democratic machine muzzled Tulsi Gabbard. And also, when I'm speaking in states, for instance, purely, super red states, I say, look, Donald Trump is going to get your electoral college votes anyway. So if you put him in office because you wanted an outsider, and I understand why you voted for Donald Trump. You wanted an outsider who was going to come in, balance the budget, cut spending. He says he's a businessman. I get it, but he didn't do that. So why not vote for me to send him a message to say, you know what? I wanted you as an outsider. You're not acting like an outsider. And at least send him the message to change his ways. And then to the people on the blue side, again, if you're in a blue state, look, Joe Biden's going to get the electoral college votes anyway. Do you want Joe Biden? If you don't, that's a wasted vote. It's going to be a wasted vote to not vote for what you want because he's going to get them anyway. And to just the average person, I say, look, there are 40 million libertarian-leaning Americans out there. If everybody voted for what they wanted, I would win in a landslide. How about voting for what you want and then getting what you want?
All right, do we have time for more questions?
You're not going to answer the wasted vote?
Nope,
Okay.
you guys nailed it.
We can't tell if they're here now.
Yeah, just go, we can't.
Hi, my name is Mike Davis. I'm from National Harbor, Maryland. I agree that alternative media is the best way to get our message out there. For Joe, have you looked at getting on the Joe Rogan podcast? I don't know where you are with that. And for Justin, is there anything you can do before you leave Congress to, I know the Commission on Presidential Debates is a private company, a corporation, but is there anything you can do to fight back against this insane 15% threshold? They claim to be nonpartisan. We know that they're not. Is there anything that we can do from a legislative standpoint on that?
Well, I can answer mine real quick. Yes, my people have been talking to his people. I don't know if we're making headway or not, but yes, many people have written to him, emailed him saying, hey, we want to see Joe Jorgensen on your show, so maybe if people continue to do it, he'll have me on. But I can tell you we have been trying. But I can tell you that somebody at headquarters is working to try to have a big media event to try to, make a splash out there, and I'm hoping it's going to be successful, so we'll see.
As for the debates, it's run privately. It's basically run by the Republican and Democratic parties when you get down to it. They're the ones who sponsor the operation. So it's very difficult to get them to lower the threshold, change the threshold. I've suggested to people that when you have, and maybe you can get the public to believe in something like this, when you have the first general election debate, they should include more of the candidates. Why don't we have a first general election debate sometime in September and include 4 or 5 presidential candidates, regardless of where they are in the polls? It should be just the standard that we expect as a country, that you're going to include more of the candidates, and then let the people see these candidates, let them hear from them in a fair way where they get several minutes of time to actually talk about their ideas, and then let the people decide. The polling will change after that. You get them on stage. If you get Joe on stage with Biden and Trump, I believe the polling would increase for her significantly, and then maybe she would reach the 15% and qualify for a future debate. So you have to open up the process, and I think that's a message we should try to spread. Open up the process, let people see the other candidates. It doesn't have to be every candidate under the sun, but it wouldn't be harmful to have 4 or 5 or even 6 candidates in the first debate, just so people get an idea of what else is out there.
So one thing we did at Free the People in 2016, trying to figure out how to put grassroots pressure on the Presidential Debate Commission, which is a private entity and controlled by the same Republicans and Democrats that they put on the stage, is that we tried to talk to their sponsors. The commission is funded almost exclusively by corporate sponsors, and I don't know who they are in 2020, but that would be a useful avenue to check out who they are and ask that they support an actual debate that is inclusive enough to include at least all candidates, let's say, that are on all 50 states. That would be a good start.
Yeah, that would be a good start. If you're on all the ballots, you should be on the debate stage.
Okay, next question, and I'm going to keep asking questions until somebody shuts me down. So,
Well, Matt, that's what I'm here to do.
Yes.